All right, so you want to dive into beholders, huh?
Sounds like a plan.
These creatures, they're like the poster children for D&D monsters.
Yeah, right. Definitely iconic.
Floating balls of eyes, shooting magic rays with a reputation that pretty much screams, nope, not getting close to that thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So what have you heard about beholders? What kind of terrifying tales have made their way to your ears?
Well, I think when most people think about beholders, they think about that raw power, those infamous eye rays.
Oh, yeah.
But what's really fascinating about these creatures goes way beyond just, what's on the surface.
Okay.
You get into the complexities of their biology, their psychology, even their strange societal structures, and that's where things get really interesting.
So it's more than just dodge the death ray and hope for a good saving throw.
Oh, absolutely.
There's more to these creatures than meets the eye. Literally.
To make a beholder encounter truly memorable, you've got to understand what drives them,
Okay.
what makes them tick.
I'm intrigued. So where do we even begin with something as bizarre as a beholder?
Let's start with the foundation, shall we?
Okay.
Their biology.
Right.
You're dealing with a creature that defies conventional anatomy, a physiology as alien as their behavior.
Well, the source material we've got here, it goes deep into their, shall we say, unique digestive system.
Right.
And honestly, I think some things are better left undescribed.
I'm inclined to agree with you there, though it does raise an important point. Beholders aren't just creatures of magic.
Okay.
Like, their physical forms are just as bizarre and otherworldly as their magical abilities. This isn't some demon summoned from the abyss. This is something else entirely.
Okay, so less fire and brimstone, more what in the nine hells is that thing?
There you go.
Got it. But you mentioned their magical abilities. Everyone knows about those eye rays, but how does that tie into this whole deeper understanding thing?
It's not just about the rays themselves, it's about what they represent.
Okay.
Each stalk, each eye, it's an extension of their psychology.
Right.
Take the telekinesis ray, for example.
Okay.
It's not just about moving objects, it's about control, imposing their will on everything around them.
So every time a beholder uses its eye stalks, it's giving us a glimpse into its mind. That's a lot of pressure for a dungeon master.
Think of it as an opportunity more than pressure. Let's say a beholder uses its disintegration ray not on a player, but on something completely mundane. A chair, a table, a piece of fruit. What's that tell you about its state of mind?
That it's not having a good day.
Perhaps.
That is a really cool way to build tension and give players subtle hints about the creature's mood. It's not just about the damage, but the why behind the action.
Precisely. And this leads us to perhaps the most intriguing aspect of beholder biology, their two minds.
The minds.
Imagine the internal conflict.
Okay.
A being constantly at odds with itself, a rational mind battling against primal instinct.
Two minds. Okay, now this is where I think things get really interesting. We're not just talking about your average monster here. This is something far more complex, right? So we're talking about a creature that's constantly second-guessing itself, battling its own instincts. Man, that sounds exhausting.
It's more than exhausting. It's a fundamental part of their nature. This internal struggle drives a lot of their seemingly irrational behavior.
Okay.
Their obsession with order, their meticulous categorization of everything, even their paranoia. It all stems from this need to impose control on their own fractured minds.
So even a beholder that seems sane on the surface is just really good at hiding its internal chaos. That's a chilling thought. So for those of us prepping to run these creatures in our campaigns, how does this internal struggle manifest itself in their layers and interactions?
Imagine a beholder's lair. It's
Yeah.
not just a dwelling, it's a reflection of their need for order.
Right.
Every corridor, every trap, every object meticulously placed, categorized, controlled.
So it's like their way of externalizing their internal struggle, creating a sense of order in the world around them to combat the chaos within.
Precisely. And this extends to their interactions with other creatures.
Okay.
They might surround themselves with minions, but these aren't allies or friends.
Right.
They're tools,
Cool.
categorized and ranked according to their perceived usefulness.
Which explains why adventurers who represent both a threat and a potential tool are such a fascinating challenge for beholders.
Speaking of challenges, the source material gives us some pretty vivid examples of how this all plays out in a campaign. I'm particularly interested in Akini and her beholder cult. Beholders manipulating things from the shadows. That's a whole other level of creepy.
Akini's story is a perfect example of how a beholder's influence can extend far beyond its immediate lair.
Yeah.
She's not just a cult leader, she's a victim. Her body and mind twisted by a beholder named Ormathulak.
Imagine, if you will, a beholder mage, manipulating events from the shadows, using pawns like a Kenny to spread its influence.
Okay, now I'm really curious about Ormathulak. What kind of beholder hatches a plan like this?
Ormathulak embodies the insidious cunning often found in beholder mages.
Right.
It understands that true power lies not just in brute force, but in manipulation, in bending others to its will.
Right.
A Kenny, an ambitious drow on the run, stumbled into its lair seeking refuge, but became the perfect tool for Ormathulak's grand scheme.
So instead of ending up as a beholder food, a Kenny becomes the beholder's agent in the world.
Precisely. Ormathulak saw potential in a Kenny's ambition, her ruthlessness. It subjected her to a horrific ritual, grafting one of its own eyes onto her forehead, a physical manifestation of its control.
Talk about a campaign hook. What player wouldn't want to investigate a cult led by a drow with a beholder eye grafted to her head?
And it's not just the visual, it's the psychological impact. A Kenny isn't just physically altered, her mind is now bound to Ormathulak's will, twisted to serve its agenda.
Wow.
She establishes the Lost Doll, a seemingly ordinary tavern that serves as a front for her cult.
So we've got this creepy tavern perched on a sea cliff, run by a drow with a beholder eye, attracting all sorts of shady characters.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Everything. And that's what makes it such a compelling scenario. The source material describes this pervasive sense of unease within the tavern.
Oh, really?
Patrons feel watched, pressured to conform. There's a haze in the air, not enough to be physically harmful, but enough to weaken their resolve.
It's like that feeling you get when you know something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Exactly. This underlying tension is Akani's true weapon. She doesn't need to resort to brute force. She controls her followers and influences others through manipulation, suggestion, and a healthy dose of fear.
And then there's Glaken, her troll bodyguard. A hulking brute madly in love with Akini. Is it just me, or does this whole setup scream danger to any unsuspecting adventurer who stumbles in for a pint?
Glaken is another example of how beholders, even indirectly, can exploit the desires and weaknesses of other creatures.
Yeah.
He's fiercely loyal to Akani, blindly devoted. The source material hints at a possessiveness in him that could prove dangerous if triggered. Imagine the chaos if the players unknowingly make a move on Akani or challenge her authority in front of Glaken.
Oh man, that's not a bar fight you want to get into. So we've got the creepy tavern, the beholder-influenced cult leader, the love-struck troll bodyguard. What's the big takeaway for dungeon masters running this encounter?
This isn't a dungeon crawl where you charge in swords swinging.
Right.
Akani's cult thrives on secrecy and manipulation.
Okay.
Players need to rely on their wits, gather information, and figure out how to navigate this web of intrigue. Do they expose Akani and risk Glaken's wrath?
Ooh.
Do they try to play along and infiltrate the cult? The possibilities are endless.
So we've gone from beholder biology to beholder psychology to, beholder-influenced cult hangouts. We've established these creatures are powerful, paranoid, and they love to manipulate. Which begs the question, if they're so good at all of that, why haven't they taken over the world?
It's the question scholars and adventurers alike have pondered for centuries. And the answer may surprise you. It lies in their very nature. The same paranoia and need for control that drive them to dominate also hold them back.
Wait, what? How does that even make sense? It seems like those traits would make them even more likely to want to rule everything.
It's not about simply ruling, you see. It's about the how and the why. Beholders, they crave validation. They need to feel superior to lord their power over others. Total domination would actually be, well, kind of boring.
So you're saying a beholder would get bored if it actually achieved its goal of ultimate power. That's both reassuring and completely wild.
Exactly. Imagine a beholder that just disintegrated all rivals. What's left? No one to control, no one to fear it, no one to validate its existence, the constant struggle, the paranoia, the need to impose order. It's all part of what drives them, what defines them.
So their greatest strength is also their biggest weakness. They're trapped by their own nature.
Precisely. And for those brave enough to face them understanding, this paradox is key. You're not just battling a creature with powerful eye rays, you're engaging in a psychological chess match.
So if brute force isn't the answer, what is? How do you even begin to outsmart something as alien as a beholder?
It starts with understanding their motivations. Can you sow discord among their minions, playing their paranoia against them? Can you present yourself as a useful tool, appealing to their desire for control?
So it's about manipulation, fighting fire with fire in a way.
In a sense, yes, but it's not about stooping to their level. It's about using their own twisted logic against them. Remember, beholders are defined by their contradictions. They crave power, but fear losing it. They desire order but create chaos.
That's a lot to keep in mind when you're staring down a disintegration ray. Any final pieces of advice for our listeners who are now thoroughly intimidated but also strangely excited to incorporate this into their campaigns?
Remember, preparation is key. Delve into their history, their psychology, even their bizarre eating habits. The more you understand about beholders, the better equipped you'll be to craft a truly compelling and memorable encounter.
Because at the end of the day, it's about telling a great story right. And few creatures in the D&D multiverse offer as much potential for intrigue, horror, and even dark humor as beholders.
Indeed. So the next time you find yourself face to eye with a beholder, remember, knowledge is your greatest weapon. Understand their nature, exploit their weaknesses, and you might just live to tell the tale.
And on that note, we'll let you go. Until next time, happy gaming.